Imagine a new kind of investing, a potentially life-changing way to invest that honors biblical principles, the kind of principles that you and I grew up with. Since 1994, Timothy Plan has made biblically responsible investing possible, offering mutual funds and ETFs that are filtered for biblical principles. Don't compromise your values. Invest with Timothy Plan. Ask your financial advisor or call Timothy Plan at 1-800-TIM-PLAN. Again, that's 1-800-846-7526 and discover what it means to be a biblically responsible investor. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Read carefully before investing. Mutual funds distributed by Timothy Partners Ltd. and ETFs distributed by Foreside Fund Services LLC. As a paid testimonial, there is no guarantee of future performance and each experience will differ.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Fire! Pursuing truth. Torching idols, rebelling against the world. This is the HECKPHIRE Podcast.
Well, hello again. Welcome to another HECKPHIRE Podcast. Great that you are with us, and I want to thank all of those of you who are watching, on our YouTube channel and made possible by our sponsors and all of that. So a number of things to get to today. Well, a couple things that I want to get to. I got to start off with this story because I need somebody out there in the sports world and sports history and investigative journalism. I want you to track down and find the authenticity of this story. I want to know if it really happened. Look, a guy like this that the story's about, who is a hero in my home state, and I know is a hero in another state as well, and he's beloved by not just the NFL community, the football community, but really the country, because he's ubiquitous, he's everywhere, and I'm speaking of Peyton Manning, a guy who gives away so much money that is his own, he gives it away, so much of it, that they name an entire children's hospital after him, which is what they did in Indianapolis, the Peyton Manning Children's Hospital. Somebody like that, you know that stories like this probably have a good chance of being true. But I also know that sometimes fans who love certain players will sometimes exaggerate accounts and all of that. I want to know if this is true. It was a cold December night just days before Christmas, and the streets of Indianapolis were dusted with snow. Inside a small diner near the stadium, an elderly waitress was working a long shift. Her hands were tired, her feet ached, but she kept moving, refilling coffee cups, clearing tables, and offering warm smiles to customers. She had been working at this diner for years, serving late-night crowds after Colts games. She had seen countless athletes and celebrities come and go, but most barely noticed her. That night, as she wiped down a booth, she glanced up and saw a familiar face walking through the door. Peyton Manning. Dressed casually in a jacket and jeans, Peyton didn't make a big scene. He simply sat down, ordered a meal, and ate quietly. When the waitress approached his table, he greeted her by name, something that stunned her. "How's your night going, Mary?" he asked warmly. She chuckled, a little surprised. "Oh, just another busy night, but I can't complain." They exchanged a few words, but Peyton didn't ask for a special treatment. He finished his meal, left a generous tip, and quietly walked out the door. It seemed like just another normal visit until Mary returned to clean his table. Underneath the coffee cup, tucked beneath the bill, was a check for $10,000 with a note. "For all the nights you've taken care of others, Merry Christmas. Thank you for everything that you do." Tears welled up in Mary's eyes. Peyton didn't announce his gesture. He didn't do it for the cameras. He simply saw someone who worked hard, who had spent years serving others, and decided to give back in the most genuine way. The next time Peyton returned to the diner, Mary tried to thank him, but he just smiled and shrugged. "You've taken care of so many people," he said. "Just figured someone should take care of you for a change." Okay. So this story here shared online has been making its rounds, and being a huge Peyton Manning fan, like there's a couple people that are living today that I would do a lot in order to be able to meet in person. And Peyton Manning's one of them. John Bon Jovi's the other. You kind of knew that. Because we've talked about it, I'm sure, before. But anyway, so I want to believe that it's true. A couple things, though, that seem odd to me about that. He left a check for $10,000. I guess maybe he's carrying around a checkbook, but that seems a little odd. I've heard of athletes leaving a $10,000 tip. Definitely heard of that before, because they put it on their bill, on their card, or whatever it is. Or I guess some of them maybe carry around that kind of cash, but probably not. But you would put it on a card and you would write that tip and she would go back and she would find it. So that would make sense to me. But carrying around a checkbook, and then that would require him to know her name, not just Mary. Can't just make the check out to Mary. I mean, I guess you could. But that seems a little odd to me as well. So I guess I'm curious if anybody out there has the ability to track down the origins of these kinds of online stories that get shared. I don't want to just dismiss it out of hand, because if that's real, that's an amazing story. And certainly the guy is incredibly generous and benevolent with his money because, of course, the Children's Hospital and all of that. And there's all kinds of these stories that go around about people like him. I'm just curious if this one's true. I guess I'd like to believe that it is. I guess if that's not true, I would like to believe that it's based on a true account, but it was really not at a small diner with an elderly waitress, but it was a different waitress I know he always went to St. Elmo's after games and would sit in a corner booth and look over game film, whether they won or they lost. That's kind of a legend in Indianapolis that he would do that. So maybe it was a waitress there after years and years of doing that he left a tip for like that. So I don't know, is it based on something, or is this just a fantastic story that is woven to make us feel good? I'm curious, so I'm putting it out there for any sleuths that may be out there. Okay, now, the main thrust of what I want to talk about, and by the way, if you are a paid subscriber, coming up in the after hours session today, I have a story. You know I've been kind of hard on RFK. I don't think it was a good appointment by Donald Trump. I don't think that the Republican senators should have approved Robert F. Kennedy. I think that it's bizarre that the Republican Party now under MAGA leadership is claiming that they're big tent. And the same people that tell me that I just need to suck it up, that a former Democrat in RFK, a guy that Barack Obama was going to put into his cabinet, almost did, a guy who has a multitude of personal character issues, but beyond that is a rabid environmentalist climate change activist and is rabidly pro-abortion, that Republicans are like, oh yeah, put him on the team. And I constantly hear, oh, well, it's big tent. The same people that are telling me big tent philosophy are the ones that are literally chasing Mitch McConnell, the guy that without him, Roe versus Wade is still standing, chase him out the door. Gone. I got a problem with that. So I've talked a lot about that. But I have the best, it could not be a better story relating to RFK. This is the kind of news that is worth celebrating. And I'm not saying this tongue in cheek. This is not a setup. It is a great story relating to RFK. And I've got that in the after hours session for those of you who are paid subscribers. So you'll look for that in the other email that will come to you. But on the podcast today, the main thing I want to talk about, did you see the book that just came out? The book that just came out, I want to get what is the name of the Jake Tapper book? Because I took some notes on it and I never got I'm going to look this up. What is it called? The new book. Well, it's not just by Jake Tapper. It's Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson. Original Sin. That's what it is. Original Sin, President Biden's Decline, Its Cover-Up, and His Disastrous Choice to Run Again. Now, that book actually comes out on May 20th. Okay? Now, the reason that this is odd to me, do you remember, and did OJ actually write the book if I did it? He did, didn't he? He didn't just talk about it. I know that he launched that nationwide search for the killer, and he was like going to all the golf courses around America looking for the killer of his wife. And sadly, no one just handed him a mirror. But OJ, I think he wrote the book If I Did It. Like, if I was going to kill my wife, I can't imagine how messed up do you have to be to not just disappear. Okay, because of racial politics and really poor, even if you want to say poor police work, it's still, there was enough there. The dude's DNA is at the crime scene. It's mixed in all of it. Everybody knows that you're guilty. And the jury, for racial reasons, finds you not guilty. Go away. You lucked out. You got away with a double homicide. So go find some hole to live in the rest of your life. Go to an island somewhere. But instead, this guy keeps up the act. Well, I didn't really do it, but if I did it, here's how I do it. Well, I'm going to go search for the killer. Listen, it's the same kind of vibe that I get when I see that Jake Tapper of CNN, that anyone in the mainstream press, but especially somebody like Jake Tapper from CNN, is writing a book about Biden's mental decline and the cover-up. You get what I'm saying, right? Jake Tapper and his entire crew over there at CNN, they were the ones covering it up. They were the ones that were hiding it. It's like OJ writing, If I Did It. You did it, OJ. Jake Tapper writing about the cover-up. You covered it up, Tapper. I just, and of course they're not alone. I mean, so many people in the media complex, and that's the reason that I've called it the Democrat media complex, and it was exposed in a greater degree than has ever been done before by this Biden thing. And just like OJ continued the ruse, continued acting like he didn't do it, that's exactly what Tapper's doing here. That's exactly what these journalists who act like, oh, we were blindsided by this. You can't be serious. You can't be serious. I just don't believe you if you're going to say that I couldn't believe that he was mentally unstable. I can't believe that he had such cognitive decline. I saw him in that debate and I was stunned. I was as stunned as anybody. No way. Look, there's a reason that Trump supporters were eager to watch that debate. I know there's a lot of them that falsely believe that Donald Trump is a good debater. He's not. He has a quick wit. But man, if you just parse his answers, if you look at what Donald Trump says, his answers to things, he doesn't know policy. He doesn't. He says some of the most ridiculous things, and at times demonstrably false, that you can just say, well, he's just being exaggerative here. But Donald Trump isn't a good policy debater. That's not why the Trump people wanted to watch. They wanted to watch because they knew Joe Biden can't string two sentences together. I mean, super majorities of American voters knew that Joe Biden was having cognitive decline. So why couldn't the media figure that out? I think you have to believe that they did figure it out, right? I mean, we all have to believe that they did figure it out. It's not like it was some classified secret. It's not a complicated story. It's not difficult to figure out and to understand. This isn't like you got to have really secret access, and we're getting leaks from inside the White House that say that sometimes Biden will zone out in the middle of meetings, or that they'll find drool on the side of his face. It doesn't require leaks from inside cabinet meetings. You can see it every time he shuffled across the floor, every time he got confused and didn't know which way to turn, every time he had to have questions and answers written on cards in front of him, every time he read names, directions, stage directions off of the teleprompter. Every time that stuff happened, every time that he totally lost his train of thought and trailed off and said, well, anyway. Everybody knew it. So for the media to act like they didn't, you're forcing me to believe that you are idiots. And I simply don't believe that Jake Tapper and the mainstream press, I don't believe that they're idiots. I don't. I suppose you can say that they are, if that's the position you want to take. But here's what you cannot believe. You can believe that the journalists knew and were covering it up, which is what I believe. You can believe that they're just bucktooth morons and have no idea what is happening and plainly obvious in front of all of us. Although, again, you got to ask the question, why do they handle him with kid gloves? Why do they not ask him tough questions? Why do they not ask his handlers tough questions about it and push them on it? What? They're not doing that for a reason. They know. But okay, the two options are that they knew and were covering it up. They didn't know. They're just dumb and they didn't know. But here's what is not possible. You cannot make the argument, and I don't know that that's what this book does because I haven't read the book. But if the book makes this argument, it is insanity. You cannot make the argument that the media treated this story of Biden's cognitive decline like all of the other stories. And the Biden administration, they were just so good and so effective at hiding it. They were just so good at staying one step ahead of everything that the press was trying to dig in and find. Okay. Charles Cook wrote a piece at National Review. And he said, here is something that we have learned over the course of the last decade. Thing one, if the media, I'm just going to read this. If the media wants to believe or promulgate a story, as it did with the Russiagate hoax, it will do so irrespective of where the evidence stands. So if there's a story that they want to cover, they don't care if there's evidence. They'll run with the story. And the whole Donald Trump colluding with Russia, and it ended up the only collusion that was ever evidenced was Hillary Clinton's campaign colluding with Russia and the Steele dossier and all of that. That's what we found out. Everybody was pointing fingers and claiming Russiagate and Donald Trump was working with Russia, and it was the Hillary Clinton campaign that had done so. That's where the evidence led. So the media is willing to run with the story, even if there's no evidence, if they want to run with that story. And it's a template that goes out, it's a narrative, and all of them report on it. Have you ever, by the way, stopped to consider, this is one of the things that I think too many people gloss over. And I know not a lot of people watch the nightly news now on ABC, CBS, and NBC, but if you did, you would see this. And if you go on websites, news websites, I don't mean like the Drudge Report or Citizen Free Press, whatever that is, or Liberty Daily, or any of those other aggregate sites. I mean like the major news sites that exist out there. They're all talking about the same stories. The same thing that ABC covers on its nightly news. Let's say that in their half-an-hour nightly news session, they've got time for 7 stories. 6 of them will be the exact same as what NBC is covering. And ABC and CBS, they're all covering the same stories. Now, what are the odds that if these were entities that were working independently of each other and were not communicating, and in fact were competing with one another, that they would be running the same stories, all essentially reporting the same things? They wouldn't be doing that. And I think too many people overlook that reality. There's a narrative, there's a template, it goes out. I don't know who's behind it. Maybe they're all working together and there's not one person calling the shots. I guess that would be more likely, that they're just all in collusion together to advance an agenda. But it's obvious that happens, and the Russiagate thing is a prime example. Now, the second thing that Cook says, the second thing that we've learned over the last decade, this is about the media, that when it is determined to make a splash, someone will do so without reference to the niceties of the trade. If you go back to 2012, do you remember Mitt Romney having a fundraiser? And there was a comment about the 47%. There was also the binder full of women, but the binder full of women came from a debate, and they just blew that up into something bizarre. But the 47% thing. And David Korn was the journalist that was in there. And David Korn secretly recorded the fundraiser and then released the audio because he wanted to make a splash and he wanted to do it on behalf of Barack Obama. My question is, for the last 4 years of the Biden administration, where was a David Korn? No David Korn out there to secretly record conversations about Biden's mental ineptness that you know were going on, and none of that happened. Sometimes you will hear, and people will say, well, the stuff that they learned from within the administration was all off the record. Okay. None of that matters when it's a Republican administration, and we all know that. Okay, certainly the David Korn, Mitt Romney thing, that was off the record, but it became the record because David Korn wanted it to be. And the media takes great pride in making it on the record if, in fact, we're talking about a Republican challenging a Democrat, because this is the Democrat media complex. But beyond that, let's just say, for the sake of argument, that the media entities that we're talking about really did have this sworn allegiance to the rules of the game, and if something's off the record, we do not report on it. Okay. But why then do you go after, like a bulldog, and attack and besmirch and smear and slander people who are not working for your journalist department there, who leak out information themselves that Biden is slipping and slipping badly, that Biden is not able to run cabinet meetings, that Biden gets lost, that Biden has to nap 18 hours a day? When those people report those things, when they comment on things, when video surfaces that was recorded by somebody, why would the media attack those people, accuse them of being deep fakes? You remember the deep fakes? Oh, this is edited. It's all deep fakes. Why would you do that if you were really pursuing the truth? Even if you want to say, well, we're not going to report on things that were said off the record. All right. But that doesn't mean that when other people who are on the record go on the record, you have to attack them. It doesn't mean you have to defend the administration from those claims, especially if you know that they're true, but that you don't feel right reporting them yourself because they were said to you off the record. In that case, you can get the story out without having to betray your source. But that's not what happened. So Cook concludes this way. He says, there's simply no way of looking at this failure by the press that doesn't indict everyone involved. Yes, because, and here's, I think, what he means by that. If the press really didn't know that Biden was cooked, as the kids say, that there was nothing left upstairs, if they really didn't know that, then the press is full of derelicts. The press is full of people who can't see past the end of the nose on the end of their face. The end of the nose on the front of their face. That's what I meant to say. It's a bunch of fools. And they have no powers of observation whatsoever. So there's that as an option. If the press had suspicions that Biden was falling apart, but they didn't want to investigate it, then what does that say? That says you have a media that you simply cannot trust, which the American people don't. They don't want to investigate it because it would hurt Joe Biden and it would help Donald Trump. So you either have a media that is staffed with people who are derelicts and imbeciles, or you have a media that is staffed with people who are corrupt and who should never work in the media again as a result of all of this. There is, I suppose, a third option that the press knew and they wanted to report on it, but they felt pressured, they felt obligated to stay quiet. Well, then what you have is a government conspiracy, a government manipulation of the free press, threatening of the free press, that is one of the greatest scandals, constitutional crises that we've had in the history of the country. By the way, I don't think that that was the case. I don't think that the Biden administration had to work too hard to twist the media's arm not to run stories about Biden falling apart. I don't think that they had to. I'm just going to be curious, and I haven't seen the book, I haven't read the book, but if this isn't Jake Tapper, and who's the other guy that wrote it? Alex Thompson, who I think did a fairly decent job as a reporter covering some of this stuff. He would at least bring it up. Jake Tapper was like a bulldog for the White House. Of course he's cognitively sound. Of course. I mean, he may not be at the top of his game physically anymore, but he's definitely at the top of his game mentally. That's Jake Tapper, okay? That's why it's so weird. It's OJ-like that he's writing this book. If this book is not a stinging, devastating indictment of his entire field of journalism, if it is not throwing journalists that he knows and works with under the bus for their failure to cover a story that they knew was going on and they simply didn't want to cover, if there is not the obliteration and firebombs hurled at the Democrat administration past, the Biden administration, for them orchestrating this cover-up, if that isn't the case, then this is going to be one of the most outrageous displays of a lack of introspection and gaslighting that you could ever imagine. So I'll wait and see myself, but man, the media has a lot to answer for. I'm just not sure I trust some of those people that have a lot to answer for to be the ones demanding answers. But I'll wait and see. You should too. Your thoughts, welcome, Peter at peterheck.com. That's peterheck.com. If you are just a free subscriber, now is your chance. You can sign up. You can be a paid subscriber. Try us out. $8 a month, $10 a month, $10 a month. And if you don't like it, if it's not worth it, then bail on us. But I'd love it if you'd try. You get access to our after hours today. It'll be accessible today. And by the way, on our Substack page, and I'm putting it in the memo that I send out every Monday to paid subscribers, all of my columns that I write elsewhere, they're all going to be posted there. I'm going to include them in my memo that comes out. So there's another perk if you're a paid subscriber, access to all of it in the same place. Okay, so that starts on Monday with the memo. If you are a free subscriber, I got to leave you here. Paid subscribers, the best story you could ever imagine relating to RFK. I got that for you, along with our Friday 5 and all that, coming up in the after hours. To the rest of you, adios. To paid subscribers, I'll see you real soon. Bye-bye. The HECKPHIRE only burns because of loyal friends and supporters of this ministry. All of these are people and groups that I know personally and trust implicitly. I can't say enough good things about my friend Jonathan at Hartman Family Farms, about my bank, First Farmers Bank and Trust, my lawn care team at True Land Equipment, my insurance company at Norris Insurance, the place where I buy and lease all of my vehicles, McGonigal GM Buick. And main attraction hair, nobody else touches this head. Stevens Machine, my mechanic at Terrell's Auto Service, my longtime realtor, the Wyman Group. And certainly so much can be said for those fighting for family values in the public square, like the Indiana Family Institute and Indiana Right to Life. Please support them all, and thank you.